hundreds of vessels were lost or abandoned in the Atlantic. One of these would become a legend. The Mary Celeste, an American registered brigantine.
Throughout maritime history, few phenomena have captivated our imagination quite like ghost ships. Vessels discovered adrift without their crews, sometimes years after their disappearance. These silent, empty hulls drift across oceans like specters, carrying with them tales of tragedy and mystery. Some reappear after being presumed lost forever, defying explanation and leaving investigators puzzled for generations. What forces allow these abandoned vessels to navigate treacherous waters without human guidance? What circumstances lead to entire crews vanishing without a trace? From the fog-shrouded waters of the North Atlantic to the tropical currents of the Pacific, these enigmatic craft challenge our understanding of the sea's power and remind us that even in our modern age, the oceans can still harbor impenetrable secrets. But to truly appreciate the enduring allure of these maritime mysteries, we must first examine the most infamous case ever documented, a vessel whose very name has become synonymous with the ghost ship phenomenon itself. On December 4, 1872, the British brig Des Gratia was sailing through the Atlantic when her crew spotted something unusual, a ship moving erratically through rough seas about 400 miles east of the Azores. As they drew closer, they recognized the vessel as the Mary Celeste, an American merchant brigantine they knew had departed New York 8 days before their own departure. Captain David Morehouse ordered his men to board the mysterious vessel, discovering what would become the most famous maritime enigma in history. The Mary Celeste was in seaworthy condition, her cargo of industrial alcohol intact, yet completely abandoned. The ship's single lifeboat was missing, but there were few signs of distress or struggle. The crew's personal belongings remained in their quarters. Their waterproof boots still hung in their proper places. Even the captain's sextant and navigation equipment remained behind, items no experienced sailor would willingly abandon. Most puzzling was the ship's log, with its final entry made just 9 days earlier, showing nothing amiss. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and the 7-man crew had vanished without explanation. A 6-month supply of food and water remained aboard. The only significant anomalies were a disassembled pump, a missing ship's chronometer and papers, and a frayed rope trailing alongside the vessel. Various theories emerged over the decades, from piracy to seaquakes, from waterspouts to insurance fraud. Some suggested the crew abandoned ship after alcohol fumes from the cargo created fear of an explosion. Others proposed more fantastic explanations involving sea monsters or alien abductions. The Mary Celeste sailed into legend, inspiring countless stories, including a famous fictitious account by Arthur Conan Doyle that muddied the waters between fact and fiction. Despite extensive investigations, no bodies were ever recovered, no distress signals reported, and no definitive explanation established. The Mary Celeste continued sailing for another 12 years before being deliberately wrecked off Haiti in an insurance scam. Yet her greatest mystery, what happened during those fateful days in 1872, remains unsolved, establishing the template for all ghost ship stories that followed. The SS Beichimo, the Arctic ghost ship. The frigid waters of the Arctic Ocean harbored one of history's most persistent ghost ships, a vessel that refused to sink for nearly 4 decades. The SS Beichimo, a 1,322-ton cargo steamer built in Sweden in 1914, began her career shuttling goods between Europe and North America before being purchased by the Hudson's Bay Company to transport fur and pelts along Alaska's unforgiving northern coast. In October 1931, the Beichimo became trapped in early-season pack ice near Barrow, Alaska. Her captain, Sidney Cornwell, temporarily evacuated the crew to land, establishing a makeshift camp to wait out the freezing. When a powerful blizzard struck on November 24th, the ship suddenly disappeared, presumed crushed and sunk beneath the ice. However, days later, an Inuit hunter reported spotting the vessel drifting about 45 miles away. The crew salvaged some valuable cargo before abandoning the Beichimo permanently, convinced the damaged vessel would not survive the brutal Arctic winter. Yet against all odds, the ship refused to surrender to the elements. For the next 38 years, this ghost ship would make sporadic appearances across Arctic waters, becoming a maritime legend. In March 1932, she was spotted by a group of seal hunters who found themselves trapped in a storm and sought emergency shelter inside her hull. Trading vessels encountered her in 1933, floating peacefully near the Alaskan coast. In 1934, a group of explorers actually boarded her, finding the captain's quarters perfectly preserved beneath a layer of ice and snow. The Bachimo continued her solitary journey, appearing like a spectre to astonished witnesses throughout the 1930s and 1940s. The last confirmed sighting came in 1969 when she was spotted frozen in an ice pack. Despite numerous search expeditions launched in subsequent decades, the Bachimo's ultimate fate remains unknown. Did she finally succumb to the unforgiving Arctic elements? Does she remain trapped in some remote ice field? Or perhaps she broke free of her icy prison and continues her ghostly wanderings through international waters, appearing only to the occasional lucky or unlucky seafarer. The MV Joyita, Pacific Ocean's enduring mystery. The turquoise waters of the South Pacific, typically associated with paradise, became the backdrop for one of maritime history's most perplexing disappearances. On October 3, 1955, the MV Joyita, a 69-foot fishing and charter vessel, departed Samoa for the Tokelau Islands, a voyage expected to take about 2 days. Aboard were 25 people, 16 crew members and 9 passengers, including a government official, a doctor, and several patients headed for medical treatment. When the Joyita failed to arrive at her destination, an extensive search operation commenced, covering over 100,000 square miles of ocean. Yet no trace of the vessel or her passengers was found. The search was eventually abandoned, with authorities presuming the ship and all aboard lost at sea, another tragedy claimed by the vast Pacific. Then, 5 weeks after her disappearance, the Joyita was discovered partially submerged more than 600 miles off course. The mystery, however, had only deepened. Despite extensive damage, the vessel remained afloat thanks to her cork-lined hull and cargo of empty fuel drums. Most disturbingly, not a single person remained aboard. The ship's dinghy and 3 life rafts were missing, along with the medical supplies, navigational equipment, firearms, and ship's logbook. The investigation revealed several puzzling details. Though the radio was tuned to the International Distress Channel, its range was limited to about 2 miles due to faulty wiring. The starboard engine was disassembled. Most of the electrical equipment was damaged. A doctor's bag was found open with bloody bandages nearby. The ship's chronometer, sextant, firearms, and logbook had vanished. Strangely, all clocks aboard had stopped at 10:25. Perhaps most baffling was the state of the vessel itself. While the Joyita had taken on water, investigators determined she was virtually unsinkable due to her design. There was no rational explanation for why the captain and crew would abandon a vessel that would not sink, especially in the dangerous open ocean, when remaining aboard would have been the safer option. Theories abounded: Japanese fishing pirates, mutiny, insurance fraud, even supernatural intervention. One theory suggested the captain, Thomas Dusty Miller, misinterpreted the severity of the leak and ordered an evacuation unnecessarily. Another proposed that the bloody bandages indicated violence aboard. The official inquiry reached no definitive conclusion, stating only that the vessel may have encountered bad weather. The Joyita was repaired and returned to service, but her reputation was forever tainted. She changed hands several times before being scrapped in the 1960s. Taking her secrets to a watery grave, while the fate of her 25 souls remains one of the Pacific's greatest unsolved mysteries. The Lady Loverbond legend. Not all ghost ships are physical vessels found adrift. Some exist primarily in folklore, materialized through repeated sightings across generations. Among these spectral crafts, few are as legendary as the Lady Loveybond, whose tragic tale has haunted the treacherous Goodwin Sands off the Kent coast of England for centuries. According to maritime legend, Captain Simon Reed married his beloved on February 13, 1748, and decided to break the seafaring superstition against bringing women aboard by taking his new bride on his merchant ship, the Lady Loveybond, for their honeymoon voyage. Unbeknownst to the captain, his first mate, John Rivers, had long harbored romantic feelings for the bride. Consumed by jealousy and rage, Rivers allegedly bludgeoned the helmsman to death, and deliberately drove the ship onto the Goodwin Sands, notorious ship-swallowing sandbanks that had claimed countless vessels. The ship broke apart, drowning all hands, including the newlyweds. What transformed this tragic maritime disaster into legend were the subsequent reports of the Lady Loverbond's ghostly reappearance. Exactly 50 years after the wreck on February 13, 1798, local fishermen reported seeing a three-masted schooner sailing full speed toward the Goodwin Sands. They attempted to signal warnings, but the phantom ship sailed on, disappearing into the mist. That same night, revelers at a nearby coastal inn claimed to hear sounds of celebration, music, and laughter carried on the wind from the direction of the sands. The 50-year cycle continued, with similar sightings reported in 1848 and 1898, each time on February 13th. The most documented appearance came in 1948, the bicentennial of the tragedy, when Captain Bull Prestwick and several witnesses claimed to have seen an 18th-century vessel sailing toward the Goodwin Sands before vanishing. Some even reported hearing the desperate screams of a drowning crew carried across the water. Skeptics point out that the Goodwin Sands area is prone to unusual atmospheric conditions that could create mirage-like optical illusions. Others note the convenient 50-year intervals coincide with moments when the legend would naturally be discussed and anticipated, priming witnesses to see what they expected. No ship's records conclusively prove a Lady Loverbond ever existed, though numerous vessels have indeed perished on the treacherous sandbanks. Interestingly, February 13, 1998 passed without reported sightings, leading some to suggest the ghostly captain and his bride finally found peace, or perhaps the legend simply lost potency in our modern, skeptical age. Whatever the truth, the Lady Loverbond represents how ghost ship tales transcend mere maritime mysteries to become powerful cultural touchstones reflecting human themes of love, betrayal, and eternal unrest. The Carol A. Deering, the ghost schooner. The early 20th century witnessed a ghost ship case that remains among the most thoroughly documented yet persistently baffling in American maritime history. The Carol A. Deering, a 5-masted commercial schooner, became the centerpiece of a mystery that would eventually involve multiple government agencies and even the personal attention of the U.S. president. Built in 1919, the Deering departed Boston in December 1920 for Rio de Janeiro with a cargo of coal. The voyage down proceeded without notable incident. After unloading and taking on ballast, the vessel began its return journey in January 1921 under Captain W.B. Wormel, an experienced but elderly mariner who had come out of retirement for this voyage. The ship was last seen near the Cape Lookout Lightship in North Carolina on January 29, 1921, when the vessel hailed the lightship. Strangely, the man who called out identified himself not as the captain but as a crew member and reported the ship had lost its anchors. 4 days later, on January 31st, the Carol A. Deering was spotted run aground on Diamond Shoals off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, an area so notorious for shipwrecks it had earned the moniker Graveyard of the Atlantic. Rough seas prevented immediate investigation. When Coast Guard personnel finally boarded the vessel on February 4th, they discovered a scene that has puzzled investigators for a century. The ship was completely abandoned, yet showed signs of recent habitation. Food was laid out in the galley as if in preparation for a meal that was never served. The crew's personal belongings remained in their quarters. The ship's logbook, navigation equipment, and the crew's papers were missing. Most bizarrely, all of the ship's lifeboats were gone, suggesting a planned evacuation rather than a sudden catastrophe, yet no distress signals had been reported. The investigation expanded when other vessels reported missing during the same period in the vicinity, leading to theories about piracy, rum-running, Bolshevik hijacking, or even supernatural intervention. The circumstances became so mysterious that 5 government departments participated in the investigation, and President Warren G. Harding received personal briefings on the case. Adding to the intrigue, the wife of the Carol A. Deering's first mate reportedly consulted a psychic who claimed the crew had been captured by pirates and forced to walk the plank. Days later, a bottle washed ashore containing a message purportedly from the Deering's chief engineer claiming the ship had been captured by oil-seeking pirates. Authorities eventually dismissed this as a hoax. Despite extensive investigation, no trace of the 10 crew members was ever found. The most plausible explanation suggests a mutiny, possibly related to the heavy-handed discipline of a senior officer, followed by an evacuation when the ship ran aground. Without survivors to tell the tale, the Carroll A. Deering joined the pantheon of enduring American maritime mysteries, the Octavius frozen in time. Among ghost ship legends, the tale of the Octavius stands as perhaps the most macabre, a vessel discovered with her entire crew preserved in death by the Arctic cold. Though historical documentation remains sparse, the story has persisted for centuries, embodying our deepest fears about the merciless Arctic environment and the hubris of those who challenge it. According to maritime law in 1775, the whaling ship Herald was navigating near Greenland when it encountered a derelict vessel drifting amid the ice floes. Several crewmen boarded the mysterious craft, discovering it to be the Octavius, a British trading vessel. What they found inside reportedly chilled them more than the Arctic air. The entire crew of 28 men frozen solid but eerily preserved in lifelike positions throughout the ship. In the captain's cabin, the boarding party allegedly discovered the ship's commander still seated at his desk, pen in hand, logbook open before him. Nearby sat the frozen body of a woman, presumably the captain's wife, covered in a blanket, and a small boy tucked into a bunk. The Herald's crewmen, thoroughly spooked, grabbed only the logbook before hastily returning to their own vessel. The logbook reportedly revealed the Octavius's extraordinary journey. The vessel had successfully sailed from England to China in 1761 and was returning home when the captain made a fateful decision to attempt the Northwest Passage, the fabled northern route connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans that had claimed countless explorers. The final entry dated from 1762, which, if accurate, meant the Octavius had been drifting with her frozen crew for an astonishing 13 years. Most remarkably, the ship appeared to have succeeded posthumously where so many expeditions had failed, completing the Northwest Passage with her dead crew, making a full circle from the Pacific back to the Atlantic, where she was discovered near Greenland. Historians remain divided on the Octavius's authenticity. No British shipping records conclusively document a trading vessel by that name during the period, and the story contains elements common to maritime folklore. The idea of perfectly preserved bodies contradicts what we know about decomposition, even in freezing temperatures. Yet the tale contains historically accurate elements. British traders were indeed operating in the Far East, and attempts at the Northwest Passage were common despite its deadliness. Whether fact or fiction, the Octavius represents our fascination with ships caught between worlds, neither fully lost nor truly found, her crew neither alive nor properly dead. Such vessels exist in a maritime limbo that captures our imagination by challenging the boundaries between the natural and supernatural. The Bermuda Triangle's vanished vessels. Few maritime regions have generated more ghost ship stories than the infamous Bermuda Triangle, that roughly triangular section of the Atlantic Ocean bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. While scientists dismiss the area's mysterious reputation, the sheer concentration of disappearances has cemented its place in maritime lore as a zone where vessels vanish without trace, occasionally reappearing as ghostly derelicts. The most significant ship disappearance in the region involved the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy collier that vanished in March 1918 while transporting manganese ore from Brazil to Baltimore. The 542-foot vessel carried 309 crew members and passengers, all lost without a single distress call or floating piece of wreckage ever found. Naval Secretary Franklin D. Roosevelt stated the vessel's fate constituted one of the most baffling mysteries in the annals of the Navy. The Cyclops' disappearance remains the largest loss of life in U.S. naval history, not directly involving combat. What makes the Cyclops case particularly intriguing were the circumstances surrounding her final voyage. Her commander, Lieutenant Commander George Worley, had a controversial reputation and faced allegations of pro-German sympathies during World War I. The ship was heavily laden, possibly overloaded, and may have had engine troubles. Some theories suggest structural failure, while others propose rogue waves, methane gas eruptions from the ocean floor, or even enemy action despite no German vessels claiming her sinking. Another notable Bermuda Triangle ghost ship was the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, which disappeared in February 1963 while carrying molten sulfur. The 523-foot tanker's last radio message gave no indication of trouble, yet she vanished with her crew of 39, despite an extensive search covering 348,400 square miles. Only a few life preservers and bits of debris were ever found. The Carol A. Deering, which we examined earlier, is also frequently associated with the Bermuda Triangle, though her grounding occurred slightly outside the traditionally defined boundaries. Similarly, the Ellen Austin case from 1881 reportedly involved a merchant ship encountering an abandoned schooner within the triangle. Twice the Ellen Austin placed prize crews aboard the derelict, and twice the vessels became separated in storms, with the ghost ship disappearing with all hands each time. Modern explanations for the triangle's reputation focus on natural factors. The area experiences powerful and sudden storms, with the Gulf Stream creating challenging conditions for navigation. The region's deep trenches can quickly swallow wreckage without a trace. Human error, combined with the high volume of traffic through this heavily traveled section of ocean, statistically increases the likelihood of maritime incidents. Yet statistics do little to diminish the eerie feeling mariners report when traversing waters where hundreds of vessels have vanished without explanation. The Bermuda Triangle remains a maritime twilight zone where the boundary between natural disaster and supernatural mystery blurs, creating perfect conditions for ghost ship legends to flourish. The Flying Dutchman, myth based on reality, sailing the misty boundary between maritime history and supernatural legend, the Flying Dutchman represents the archetypal ghost ship in global culture. Unlike other vessels we've examined, the Dutchman was never meant to be found. It exists perpetually in the realm of sighting and legend, a warning apparition rather than a physical derelict. According to the most prevalent version of the legend, the Flying Dutchman was a Dutch merchant vessel captained by a man variously named Hendrik van der Decken, Willem van der Decken, or Bernard Fokker. In the 17th century, this captain attempted to round South Africa's treacherous Cape of Good Hope during a terrible storm. When his crew begged him to turn back, the captain, either drunk or mad with determination, ignored their pleas, even swearing an oath that he would round the Cape if it took until doomsday. This blasphemous defiance of nature and God brought supernatural retribution. The ship and her crew were condemned to sail the seas eternally, never making port, never finding rest. The ghostly vessel supposedly appears to other ships as a glowing spectral image, sometimes attempting to send messages to land or approaching vessels. According to superstition, seeing the Dutchman is a portent of doom, a warning that disaster will soon befall the witness. Numerous sightings have been reported through centuries. In 1835, a British ship off the Cape of Good Hope reported a Flying Dutchman encounter that ended with the mysterious vessel sailing directly into a terrible storm. In 1881, future King George V of England, then a midshipman, recorded in his log a sighting of a strange red light resembling a phantom ship. During World War II, multiple German submarine crews reported Dutchman sightings before their vessels were lost. What gives this legend such enduring power? Maritime historians note that the Cape of Good Hope was genuinely one of the most dangerous shipping passages in the world, claiming countless vessels. Atmospheric conditions in the area, including temperature inversions and humidity layers, can create superior mirages that cause distant ships to appear to float above the horizon, a natural explanation for many Dutchman sightings. More significantly, the Flying Dutchman embodies universal maritime anxieties. The fear of being eternally lost at sea, never returning to land or loved ones, denied even the peace of death. For sailors facing the ocean's dangers daily, the legend served as a moral tale about respecting nature's power and accepting one's human limitations. The Dutchman transcended maritime folklore to become a cultural touchstone, inspiring Wagner's opera De Vliegende Hollander, Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and countless modern films and novels. Even in our technological age, this spectral ship continues to represent humanity's uneasy relationship with the sea, a reminder that for all our advancement, some boundaries remain perilous to cross. Modern ghost ship cases. The phenomenon of ghost ships isn't merely historical. The 21st century has produced several remarkable cases of vessels found drifting without crew under bizarre circumstances. Modern communications, GPS tracking, and search capabilities make these contemporary disappearances all the more puzzling, proving that even in our technologically advanced age, the seas can still claim ships and crews without revealing their secrets. One of the most perplexing modern cases involved the Qaunta, a 9.8-meter catamaran discovered drifting off the coast of Queensland, Australia in April 2007. The vessel, dubbed the Ghost Yacht, was found in perfect condition with its engine running, a laptop open and functioning, food and drinks set out on tables, and personal belongings undisturbed. The three-man crew, experienced sailors Derek Batten, Peter and James Tunstead, had vanished without trace. Most strangely, the vessel's single life jacket remained stowed, and the emergency beacon was never activated. An extensive investigation concluded the men likely encountered trouble while fishing. Authorities speculated that one man fell overboard, and in a chain of tragic events, the others perished in rescue attempts. However, the perfect condition of the boat, with its table set for a meal and engine still running, continues to raise questions about this explanation. In 2018, the Indonesian ghost ship Samratulangi PB 1600 was discovered by Myanmar fishermen drifting without crew nearly a decade after it was last documented in operation. The 177-meter cargo ship had been abandoned during transport to a scrapyard when tow lines broke in bad weather. For years, this massive vessel had drifted undetected through some of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Even more recently, in 2020, the Panamanian-flagged livestock carrier Gulf Livestock One disappeared in a typhoon off Japan with 43 crew members and nearly 6,000 cattle aboard. While some wreckage and 2 survivors were recovered, the main vessel vanished so completely that conspiracy theories emerged about its fate. Meanwhile, North Korean ghost boats, small wooden fishing vessels carrying dead crews, regularly wash ashore in Japan, presenting a different kind of ghost ship phenomenon. Between 2013 and 2019, more than 500 such boats drifted to Japanese shores, many containing skeletal remains. Investigators believe these represent desperate North Korean fishermen pushed to dangerous distances by food shortages and fishing quotas. Modern ghost ships also include intentionally abandoned vessels like the MV Alta, which drifted crewless across the Atlantic for 18 months before running aground in Ireland during a 2020 storm. The crew had been rescued in 2018 near Bermuda, but the derelict vessel continued its solo journey across an entire ocean undetected. What distinguishes modern cases is not just their recent occurrence, but the contrast between our technological capabilities and our continued inability to prevent such mysteries. Despite satellite tracking, emergency beacons, radio communications, and global positioning systems, ships still vanish, sailors still disappear, and vessels still drift undetected across vast ocean expanses. These contemporary ghost ships remind us that for all our advancement, the fundamental perils of the sea remain unchanged from those faced by sailors centuries ago. Scientific explanations for ghost ships. The tantalizing mysteries surrounding ghost ships often inspire supernatural interpretations, but modern science provides rational explanations for many aspects of these maritime enigmas. Understanding the natural phenomena, weather patterns, and human factors involved helps demystify these cases without diminishing their historical significance or emotional impact. One of the most important scientific concepts in explaining abandoned vessels is the phenomenon of broaching. This dangerous situation occurs when a vessel turns sideways to oncoming waves, potentially causing rapid capsizing. A sudden broach can force crew members overboard in seconds, leaving the vessel itself relatively intact but completely abandoned. This may explain cases like the Qaunta, where the yacht was found in good condition with no crew aboard. Meteorological factors play crucial roles in many ghost ship incidents. Microbursts, intense localized columns of sinking air within thunderstorms, can produce winds exceeding 100 miles a month in otherwise moderate weather conditions. These sudden violent weather events can overwhelm vessels without appearing in broader weather reports, making their effects seem mysterious in retrospect. Similarly, rogue waves, enormous surface waves that appear suddenly even in calm seas, can reach heights exceeding 90 feet. Before modern scientific confirmation of their existence, accounts of such waves were often dismissed as sailor superstition. Ocean currents explain how abandoned vessels can travel vast distances without human guidance. The Gulf Stream in the Atlantic and the Kuroshio Current in the Pacific can carry derelict vessels thousands of miles along predictable paths. This explains how ships like the SS Baichimo could repeatedly appear in different locations along Alaska's northern coast, following natural drift patterns rather than supernatural agency. The phenomenon of methane gas hydrates, ice-like structures on the ocean floor that can suddenly release large gas bubbles, potentially explains some rapid sinkings. These bubbles can significantly reduce water density, causing vessels to lose buoyancy and sink with little warning. Such an event might explain cases where ships disappear without distress signals, particularly in areas like the Bermuda Triangle, known for underwater methane deposits. Human psychology contributes to ghost ship mysteries in several ways. Paradoxical undressing, a phenomenon where hypothermia victims remove clothing despite freezing temperatures due to confused mental states, might explain why crews abandon ships inappropriately. Group psychology, particularly the contagion of fear, can lead to poor decision-making during emergencies, potentially causing crews to abandon seaworthy vessels unnecessarily. Modern forensic analyses of historical cases suggest more prosaic explanations for famous disappearances. The Mary Celeste mystery, for instance, likely resulted from alcohol fumes from the cargo creating fear of explosion, prompting a temporary evacuation that became permanent when the lifeboat's line broke. The Carol A. Deering case bears hallmarks of mutiny followed by deliberate abandonment. These scientific explanations don't diminish the human tragedy or historical significance of ghost ship incidents. Rather, they help us understand the complex interactions between maritime environments, vessel dynamics, and human behavior that create these enduring mysteries. In many cases, the true explanation likely involves multiple factors combining in unique, unfortunate circumstances, a perfect storm of causality that leaves investigators with partial answers and continuing questions. Psychological aspects of ghost ship stories. Ghost ship tales captivate us not merely as maritime mysteries, but as powerful psychological narratives that resonate with fundamental human fears and existential questions. Understanding the psychological underpinnings of our fascination helps explain why these stories persist across centuries and cultures, transcending their historical specifics to become enduring archetypes in our collective imagination. At the most basic level, ghost ships tap into our fear of abandonment and isolation. The image of a vessel designed specifically for human occupation and operation, drifting empty through vast oceans, represents a profound wrongness, a violation of the natural order. Psychologically, we recognize ships as extensions of human society, microcosms of civilization. An abandoned ship becomes an unsettling symbol of humanity's absence, triggering deep-seated anxieties about our own potential abandonment. The liminal nature of ghost ships particularly disturbs us. These vessels exist in a borderland between presence and absence, neither fully lost like ships that sink nor properly functioning. This in-between state mirrors our uncomfortable relationship with mortality itself. Ghost ships represent a kind of living death, continuing to exist without fulfilling their purpose. Jungian psychologists note how this liminality connects to universal archetypes of the uncanny, objects that seem simultaneously familiar and alien. Maritime psychologists have studied why seafarers throughout history have been particularly susceptible to ghost ship beliefs. The isolation of ocean voyages combined with sleep deprivation, unusual light conditions, and the psychological stress of danger creates perfect conditions for hallucinations and misperceptions. The sociological need for cautionary tales in dangerous professions further reinforces these narratives. Ghost ships serve as powerful reminders of the sea's dangers. Cultural anthropologists observe how ghost ship legends reflect specific cultural anxieties across different eras. During the Age of Exploration, ghost ships represented fears about venturing into unknown waters. During wartime, they embodied anxieties about missing sailors and uncertainty about loved ones' fates. In our modern era, they persist as reminders of technology's limitations and nature's continuing dominance despite our advancements. The narrative structure of ghost ship stories contains psychological hooks that make them particularly memorable and transmissible. They typically feature unexplained disappearances, creating cognitive tension that demands resolution, personal belongings left behind, humanizing the mystery, and signs of interrupted activity, meals laid out, logs partially completed that create uncanny scenes we can vividly imagine. These elements make ghost ship stories sticky, easy to remember, compelling to retell, and resistant to rational dismissal. Perhaps most significantly, ghost ships represent what psychologists call ambiguous loss, situations without closure or clear understanding. The lack of bodies, the absence of witnesses, and the incomplete evidence create unresolved narratives that our minds continue to process and revisit. We are naturally drawn to these open-ended mysteries, our cognitive architecture designed to seek patterns and completeness where none exists. This psychological resonance explains why ghost ships remain powerful cultural symbols even as their scientific explanations become better understood. They speak to something deeper than rational inquiry. They connect to our existential uncertainty about mortality, our fear of being forgotten, and our discomfort with the vast, uncontrollable forces of nature. Maritime lore and abandoned vessels. The enigmatic nature of ghost ships extends beyond their mysterious circumstances into complex legal territory. Abandoned vessels floating in international waters create unique challenges in maritime law, raising questions about ownership, salvage rights, environmental responsibility, and jurisdictional authority that often remain unresolved for years. Under traditional maritime law, abandoned vessels fall under the principle of finders keepers. Anyone discovering a derelict ship could claim salvage rights. However, modern international agreements have created a more complex framework. The 1989 International Salvage Convention establishes that while salvors can claim compensation for recovering abandoned vessels, ownership doesn't automatically transfer. The original owner generally retains legal title unless they explicitly abandon all claims, creating situations where ghost ships have ambiguous legal status for extended periods. The case of the MV Alta, which washed ashore in Ireland in 2020 after drifting crewless for 18 months, illustrates these complications. Despite being abandoned by its owners and crew, questions about legal responsibility for its removal and environmental remediation remained contested between multiple jurisdictions and potential claimants. Similarly, the Lyubov Orlova, a Russian cruise ship that broke free while being towed to scrap in 2013, drifted through international waters as a hazard to navigation for over a year, with no nation accepting clear responsibility for tracking or securing it. Modern ghost ships often become stateless vessels, floating legal voids that exist outside national jurisdictions. This creates particular concerns regarding environmental hazards, as abandoned ships can leak fuel, cargo, and hazardous materials. The MV Rift, abandoned off Yemen in 2018 with 1.1 million barrels of crude oil aboard, represents an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen. Yet international legal mechanisms for addressing such situations remain inadequate. Insurance complications further entangle ghost ship cases. Marine insurers typically require proof of loss before settling claims, but ghost ships that disappear without trace create evidentiary challenges. The case of the SS Beichimo illustrates this problem. The vessel's owners and insurers settled claims after her presumed sinking, creating complicated questions about ownership when she continued to appear for decades.